general interest in astronomy, and this was, of course, with just the use of binoculars. I was still able to, with my mom's encouragement, explore things that were astronomy related as a child. And after high school, or during high school rather, I had co-op and volunteer opportunities that gave me more interest and introductions to astronomy. So it was a natural thing for me to explore that as a program in undergrad. But by, I would say, third year, when I was at the University of Toronto, it came across, when choosing courses, that there was this small program called Planetary Science, and it piqued my interest. I was like, what is this? And so once I learned that you could combine different science courses that still work towards that program, I was more intrigued, and that's where I took my first geology course in mineralogy, and I have to say that something clicked in that whole process that made me realize planetary science is a field, because up until then I only knew about astronomy. So this is how that journey began of planetary. It is not just myself, as you may see through the Canadian Space Agency's website. We are a whole community of space professionals that come with a variety of backgrounds, educational backgrounds, but also cultural backgrounds, and we are equipped to speak to certain aspects around space exploration. So this is an initiative that the Space Agency took to be able to connect the professionals with the broader Canadian communities, because everyone would like to speak to an astronaut, but while that is also being considered, I think the community at large would like to let the public know that there are many of us who can speak on a variety of aspects. So I'm one of many space ambassadors. I think through a variety of ways, it's always exciting to see the audience's reactions when I mentioned that, the Canadarm, they know about that and the Canadian contribution, but to indicate that that was actually something that was thought of, designed, or even made here in the Greater Toronto area, I think is the number one shock that everyone has been like, really? And so that's already one way to help make that direct connection. But Canada is well known for its role in robotics and autonomous robotics and aspects like that. So we know that we have made contributions to the space program in that sense. But we were the third country to launch a satellite. So there's a huge expertise around satellite launch, satellite design, satellite instrumentation, and really now we are relying on satellites so much because of our digital needs, and so it's a good moment to help explain how that's, launching and planning to launch a satellite can help address so many questions right here on Earth, whether it's monitoring weather, whether it's looking at the ice coverage in northern communities, because that is a needed resource. Something about telehealth, something that had direct roots in space exploration. The ability for general public to access medical needs without relying on having to actually physically go somewhere. So telehealth medicine is really pulled off. And then just even general monitoring of our landways, our seaways, and places like that. And to know about migration patterns and seeing how, we can take care of the nature around us. So all of that are direct applications of space innovation in our daily lives. And then, of course, there's the usual curiosity of what's out there going forward, whether it's to other galaxies or even in our own solar system. So Canada has a lot to celebrate in terms of what it is able to provide, showcase, and it is now a global participant and member too. So other countries are calling to Canada to help with those sort of global missions where it's a team effort. It's certainly introducing the topics in a way that is relatable to the audience. So I often work with kids, so trying to connect with things that they may know. They of course know Elon Musk and they know about SpaceX and all that they're doing, but it's also a moment to reflect or to show that this is now because of things that have happened in the past. Some may have been good decisions, some may have been learning moments, but it is also a way to kind of remind that there are so many parts to it. What you're seeing is the end result, but it is years of thought, testing, risk-taking. Sometimes things would not work, and then going back to the drawing board, but at the end, knowing that they're not going to give up until they know what is possible. And so that's where we're able to see these sort of examples of different members kind of now pushing those boundaries. But it's also a moment to, I think in this day and age, and kids are themselves reminding us, we have to think of our own environment. So I think there's a lot of conversations that are coming up on just how do we ensure it is sustainable, and how do we ensure it's not hurting others in the process, because while the curiosity is there, we can't ignore those aspects. So this current, I guess, decade or generation, I think is the first where we're opening that mindset that it's not only particular STEM fields that will translate to working in the space sector. Yes, space is very much incorporating aspects of science, tech, engineering, math, but there's the art of communicating. And there's also like the financial side, right, which we don't necessarily relate to immediately. But I think we're in a good moment to witness how different sectors are all still able to put that their mark on space, and again sharing these stories. So it's not just myself or a few people who are doing it. It's a chance for us to help, I guess, to help introduce the audience to the variety of jobs, the variety of sectors. So no matter what your interest is, STEM or otherwise, know that there is a place in the space sector. And I think it falls on us from the sector, but also different ways, maybe through showcasing that helps connect to that sort of high schooler to know that, okay, no matter what, it's okay you don't have the particulars figured out, but if you're curious about it, know that you can reach out, you can follow us on the social medias, or even check out on YouTube just to know the particulars and know just how you can also be part of the space sector. Telemedicine is coming up very frequently, and so it is quite clear on what sort of impact that is leading to, because it can help reach communities a lot sooner, help diagnose, help avoid going to that sort of ER scenario and things, right? So that is one certain discovery that I can relate to being a major one. But I will admit, when I was in grad school, using satellite information to study the far side of the moon, I happened to witness or be part of that sort of generation that saw different countries launch their own missions to the poles of the moon. And for example, in about 2008 to 2010, USA, so NASA, India, and a whole other set of countries were all launching these sort of missions to go and see if there was water on the moon. And I do recall that being one of again, attending a conference, hearing about the first results, and India was the first to kind of say, hey, there's water. And it was soon confirmed by NASA scientists, et cetera. And I do remember there being a shift in the way future space exploration was now being thought of, to the point where we are right now, where we are about to launch the Artemis missions that'll head us back to humans exploring the moon, which has its own set of conversations going. But there is that sort of renewed interest. Canada is sending our own astronaut in that mission. But I can see how, because of that discovery, I think the thought process, at least outwardly, became a bit more clear of, okay, this is where we would want to go. How do you now focus the missions for human exploration to not rely on taking things from Earth as much? So to me, I think that was a bit of at least for me in that grad school mode, was a bit of okay, the conversations now were a bit more clear. And we were now starting to, set new ways to go and explore rather than only relying on the ways that were done previously. So I think overall, as a sector, we will always need that expertise. The current generation is kind of handling what's happening in the last few decades into the coming decades, but it's not set forever. So we are relying on the next generation of experts to come in and continue that work or take it forward. And in that sense, this is where I believe the earliest you can get that next generation is as early as elementary school, So we are seeing there are quite some initiatives where the focus is how to introduce space to grades 1 all the way through 8. So there are different initiatives, there are many organizations working. Where I see that we need to do more work, et cetera, is in that high school age where they may start to learn about this. They may learn in grade 9, at least in Ontario. This is part of the curriculum that is expected to be learned. But I would say, from experience of having students, they have told me how after grade 9 there was no awareness around it, and so that I think is already the gap that needs to be tackled in some way, because they're the ones who will then be deciding which sort of programs, etc., they would like to explore. And so the more we can help through outreach to make the connections of, no matter what your interest, know that there's a role for you in space is definitely needed. And I think this is how the sooner we can get the word out about the variety of careers, the variety of people, and the variety of jobs that will exist. Even like job roles are changing, titles are changing, the role of artificial intelligence is coming up more and more. There are a variety of ways it can all be incorporated, but know that we still need human brain power to kind of sort through that information, make decisions, etc. Right? So as long as the workforce is there, there will always be the needs to get more talent, and so that is where public outreach is the first way to help make that connection. So from what I have seen, definitely, like the common programs kids use is like Scratch. There are lots of initiatives and even mini challenges that space agencies are putting out there to use Scratch in order to help understand some space principles, like, where would you land your rover? How do you go and ensure you can avoid certain obstacles but still reach your destination? So that is one way coding is already being incorporated in that sense. Minecraft, I hear, there is so much. I have personally not explored it, but I've seen how involved kids are getting in that sort of world. And it's a really great educational tool to, again, help understand and explain the technicality of it in simplistic forms, and visually, like, it's very engaging, right? So coding is an integral part of it, but I think where there's still room, and maybe it's sort of coming up now more and more, is how to use that coding skill in any scenario, space or otherwise, right? And so this is where I think it's good that kids have that interest or are kind of getting the skill sets, but they will probably need more and more opportunities to test that out in real life scenarios that space provides. So I think it's like how we used to have to rely on or learn how to do math without a calculator, but the calculator is still needed, and we are just using it as a tool to move along, because there's, again, in space data, there's lots of data. So rather than getting to do it, work on it manually, coding and related tools will always be able to help us move through that large data quicker. And to answer the other part is, there are always hackathons and things happening. And so, we run the local event for the NASA Space Apps Challenge in Mississauga, and so we invite anyone, whether you have the coding skills or not, to work on challenges that are using open source data with the intention for it to help the general public, but it is based on real life space scenarios and challenges. So that's another way for them to get to test out where those coding the skills and knowledge can be applied. To know that there's the core fundamentals of robotics, but then to understand how to use it in some combination with other STEAM skills in space sort of scenarios is, I think, where there's room for us to make that connections more. GIS is like the geographic information science, some call it systems. That is the science that basically involves the role of geography, so topography or knowing where you are location-wise, and incorporating it into any scenarios where you want to know what's the best thing to do. So in an urban setting, for example, when a city is new and it's starting to grow. Often GIS tools and the idea of layering your data information comes in very handy to notice any patterns, to notice any sort of, okay, this might be the best spot to put a fire hydrant, but guess what? It is so close to a river that maybe it won't be for whatever reason. So I would say the science of understanding how location can drive whatever it is that you're doing is something that I think those who are in the field already know it and see the point of it, but I will admit, yes, I think the more youth are aware of it, I think they can see the relevance of that. And so ArcGIS is one of the sort of programs to use, but the whole science of it is where you're now trying to figure out where, you want to, where's the ideal spot for whatever you want to do. So from a space setting, we use GIS actively in order to determine the best location to land something, to know that you may need a buffer. Like ideally you want to land there, but what happens if you have a buffer around some area? You want to avoid rocks, so you want to be able to know, okay, how do I ensure my path is going to be someplace where it's not going to bump into a rock, because that's pretty expensive stuff you're sending to be like hit so soon. But also to be realistic of, okay, if you want to go to a destination that looks very appealing because pictures are telling you that, the role of GIS will help you understand, well, is it easy for you to traverse that far, or there's a slope in front of you that you have to maneuver around and stuff. So I think that's where there are courses that introduce it from a space exploration program option. From a planetary program option, it may be things that are introduced in undergrad or beyond, but I think it's more, once you discover it, you're like, whoa, cool, I don't want to not use it anymore, so you try to find ways to incorporate it. Of course, we know there are huge ethical issues or conversations that have come up even for something as straightforward as going to the moon, right? Like no one owns it there, and who is the body that is deciding what is happening? And so certainly there were issues that have been observed from what happened in the past. I think more and more conversations are happening, but need to happen, because it's only a topic that matters to, I think, a small percentage in the space community, because many are still looking at it as a destination must reach kind of mindset. But as long as the conversation and the points are being brought up, it won't go very quietly. And also this is a moment where these are becoming something like, with the Artemis mission to the moon, there are these Artemis records, which every participating country is basically having this conversation and trying to figure out how to put it into words that states that this is the understanding. Even resource extraction, is that right or wrong? And I think this is where I'm not the expert to kind of talk to it fully, but I do know and I'm aware that those conversations are becoming front and center, and it's something that everyone's being reminded not to forget about. I would say through my learning journey, realizing that accessing the data was that easy, and this is data that has been taken of other planets and things, and I was like, really? We can all just go and find it? And so that probably is the most underrated. And then when I would tell like other family or friends, they'd be like, huh? But they would also, once they understood, they were like, oh, really? And then my pitch would go up and up, because I was so excited seeing the photos that were taken and being like, oh my gosh, look, that's a little space rock went and hit that. And you could see it. And I think I was always blown away at the detail you could get from satellites. And all I'm doing is sitting at a chair and a table and having access to a desktop. And I was like, that is so cool. And why don't more people know about this? We really shouldn't send it up, only because we should do a better job of handling our garbage on Earth, because you're putting a lot of fuel to send something up, which is essentially going to get burnt on its way back or something like that, right? So, but I would say all of this excitement is helping me remember and realize maybe it is a moment to also think back to what we have right here on Earth. When you go through places and you pick up a rock, that rock is holding history of how it formed, how it survived maybe through certain things, but it also then got modified and changed up to look the way that it now does, which is mind-blowing. It has taken like millions of years for you to then be able to still hold it, right? And so I think it's a really powerful moment to be like, oh wait, stop. Without all the other fancy stuff, it is very basically, there was rock formed, it went through a journey, it underwent some challenges, it still survived. It has now made its way for you to be able to pick it up. Like I've traveled to the Himalayas in India, and I know when we were there for completely different reasons, but I would pick up the rocks, and I had just studied about the gem garnet, but garnets are found in really deep locations. So to think that I happened to be on that mountain and being able to see that rock that had gone through so much pressure, so much temperature change, and then was able to leave an imprint of its journey in there was so mind-blowing. And I'm like, more people need to know about geology and the rocks and the history of it, because even as we go and explore other destinations, etc., it always comes back to, well, what can it help us learn about our own planet or our own solar system, our own sun, because we're always wanting to know about what we can't see from really early on, right? So I would say, hopefully, yes, that is something that I would want to think back on, even moving forward. And we're at a time when, again, we can't ignore the climate crisis. And so these are, again, instances and ways to help us realize and value what it is that we really have before it gets fully lost. The ability to ponder about what's out there. We live in a very light polluted area. But I encourage everyone to take a moment and actually just drive somewhere far away, maybe it's camping, etc., where you have a chance to just be under a night sky and to be able to just see what it is. And it's mind-blowing. And I think that's a moment to help you really place yourself and be like, all right, what is my purpose? Or what are we doing? And I think those little moments are always great reminders to say, okay, we can do a lot more to help have this available for the next generation, right? I think this is where we seem to be going so fast in everything that we're doing, but we're actually kind of losing some of those very core fundamental moments of joy that can come from the simplest of places, like looking at the night sky. It sparks that curiosity. It kind of has conversations going, but we need to be able to see it or access it. So through my learning journey, and now I do have friends in the sort of sector who are doing that type of research. One of the early things that really was mind-blowing was the role of astrobiology. So you can think of biology, but now in a space context. What are organisms, maybe bacteria or things that will survive in the extremes of conditions? Maybe it's unicellular, multicellular. I'm not a biologist, so I'm not going to go into that. But the fact that they are able to study that, to understand that, to then, again, connect that to where do we see this on Earth? Is that something that still exists? Is really something that I did not think about prior, but in meeting such people, it helped me put in perspective of, oh, there's that side of space exploration. We know about star formation, star evolution, all of that. And then there's the planetary end where you're now exploring every corner of your solar system. But to know that then there's a biology aspect to it, yeah, that is something that I had not considered. To the farming, I think this is again where you are seeing how something that was intended to be maybe for a space perspective is actually now being used more actively in daily lives, such as the role of satellites and using how weather patterns are changing, how the landscapes are also modifying to help someone like a farmer know where is the best place to put said crops. What are your soil conditions? Is it going to be, able to sustain whatever it is that you have in mind? And so to be able to meet people who are in that level of, say, environmental studies, where they are using space exploration materials and innovations to help with the environmental aspect, I think are two that really stick out. Robotics and things are, like, again, mind-blowing, because something that would maybe have taken a lot of human power can now be suddenly done with a lot of ease, and really no humans are harmed in any way, but it really is serving like a sort of added value of doing the work for you without taking away your mental abilities, or your sort of thing. So I think each avenue of where space is and the kinds of work that happens is helping us and finally, I would say, even just, we had the solar eclipse recently, right? And I think in that moment of helping understand, and well, this is the year of the sun. This is, like, in heliophysics world, this is the year that everyone is celebrating our sun. To be able to know of the innovations, technologies, and now the research that happens to just even know about our own sun is mind-blowing, because you would think, oh, it's the sun, it's just here, it's like a middle-aged star. But no, there's so much happening. If you happen to see the auroras from 2 months ago, again, that was a moment to be like, this is what our sun is capable of doing, right? So I think I've met people from different aspects of space exploration where whatever they're doing, so cool, so neat, and yet you can see just how it impacts that sector, and so having that sort of knowledge is really very, very cool. I think at the very core of it is just having the space to try to learn about these things, whether it's hands-on or an ability to gather with others, to like hear from someone about these things. Having that sort of opportunity to just bring the groups together is the first need. We all do it in our own sort of neighborhoods, etc., but it's because it is so small, maybe it's not getting to the ears of our officials. But I think in knowing that there are the future gaps that we already foresee in, like, the lack of labor or the skill sets that are needed, the jobs will keep coming because the sector is booming and all of that. But knowing that we are already seeing the gaps where we're not having that sort of equitable representation, and the only way that can be sort of lessened, that gap, is knowing that you can have an opportunity to gather and to try these things out and explore and just do, you're not being forced to have a particular approach or anything, just giving them that chance to just try. And on their own, like for kids rather, to on their own discover, oh, this is cool, I want to try something else. And like fostering that environment to help those sort of gatherings to happen would be the first main thing. I would say more than websites, it's actually, social media is the place of late. So whether it's YouTube or Instagram or any of the common platforms, there are many science communicators who are making it their, utmost importance to help spread the awareness, to help dispel any myths or rumors or sort of things like that. But I would say that is probably more than websites, because websites often are reading. And I think we're in a day and age when reading may not be that sort of exciting a thing, but rather hearing and kind of seeing that is a bit more impactful. So
what search words should they use?
I mean, again, science communicator, any of the space themes like astronomy, robotics, space exploration, and things like that. And I would say there are science communicators across the globe who are making it quite easy now to understand the fundamentals that are very common in space, but also in a digestible sense, so that you can learn more about a topic. The first thing is, if you're curious, explore that curiosity. So whether it's in the form of reading a book, maybe going to the local library, or meeting up with people in the sort of neighborhoods that you're in to try and test certain things and try to, you know, have that curious exploration kind of mindset and start as early as possible. But again, thanks to now social media, there is a platform for you to connect with those who are more professional in the field to reach out and clarify any questions, attend any sort of gatherings where someone is talking about this sort of thing. So get out there is sort of the thing, I would say. And for anyone who's curious about the sector, yeah, reach out. It's now a lot easier to reach out to people. Understandably, give them time to respond, but I think everyone is keen on helping share the wonders of space exploration. So just reach out and don't feel shy.